A webinar participant asked, what criteria should we use when comparing and contrasting ideas, solutions? This is a great question because a lot of teams use these frameworks where they're evaluating effort and impact on the customer, their confidence in those things. We have a million frameworks for how to sort lots of ideas. I actually don't recommend using these frameworks when you're comparing and contrasting. When we're comparing and contrasting 3 different ideas rather than like 100 ideas, we actually can go deep and when we're looking at the pros and cons of the different ideas. And what I recommend instead is that we actually use assumption testing to support comparing and contrasting. So if I have whittled my ideas down to the top 3 and I'm trying to set up a good compare and contrast decision, what I want to do is I want to take those 3 ideas and break them down into their underlying assumptions. Product teams tend to make assumptions across 5 categories: desirability assumptions, viability assumptions, feasibility assumptions, usability assumptions, and ethical assumptions. If you're not familiar with these categories, take a look at the link in the post. It just does a deep dive on these 5 types of assumptions. And then what I would do is I would look at what are my riskiest assumptions from each idea, run assumption tests for those assumptions, and then that gives me my first round of compare and contrast data to start to look for, do I have a clear front runner? The reason why I like to use assumption testing to support compare and contrast decisions is when we just use those spreadsheet frameworks, they're full of assumptions. We're guessing at the effort. We're guessing at the impact. We're guessing at our confidence level. Whereas if we run a feasibility test, or we run a desirability test, or we run even an ethical test, we're starting to get real data about how an idea might play out versus a different idea. And so if we're working with a target opportunity that's important enough that we're setting up a compare and contrast decision, I don't want to choose a front runner based on just what I believe. I actually want to collect some real world data, and that's where assumption testing can allow us to do that really quickly. What about you? What criteria do you use when supporting your compare and contrast decisions? I'd love to hear about it in the comments.